In this video, I'll show you 4 essential animation tips and tricks using Adobe Animate. Follow along and learn how to add a slow panning animation to an image, use a mask to create a text reveal, set a fade-in animation to a title, and finally, add a pulse motion preset to a button. So let's jump right into this video and start creating. Let's begin by creating a new document for our digital ad. I'm going to click on Create New. That launches the Create New document window. From the categories up top, I'm going to choose Ads. And we want to select Large Rectangle. You can see the details here, 336 width, 280 height. The frame rate is 30, and the platform type, HTML5 Canvas. Once you have these settings in place, go ahead and click Create. I'm going to make my way up to File, Import, and then choose Import to Stage. I'm going to locate the Illustrator document that will import to the stage. You can see it here, mealprep_ad.ai. This will be available to you in the practice files to go along with this tutorial. I'm going to click Open, and that will launch the Import to Stage window. Now to make it easier, I'm just going to click on this icon here to collapse all layers. That gives you a better picture of all the layers in this Illustrator document: button, title, copy, shapes, and image. Just ensure that this is also selected. Place objects at original position. Once that is all in place, go ahead and click Import. I'm going to make my way down to the timeline, and you can see that all the layers that are in my Illustrator document have now carried over to the Animate stage. You'll also notice that I have the image hanging over the stage or the canvas here. To fix that, in the upper right hand corner, let's click Clip Content Outside the Stage, and you'll notice that all the image that was hanging outside has now been masked. I'm also going to go up to Fit in Window in the magnification here. Let's click that to get a better view of the overall design. Now, there are a couple aesthetic things that I'd like to fix. Oftentimes when you're importing from Illustrator, some of the text will shift, some of the kerning and the leading will be off as well. You'll notice that here in my title. So I'm going to click that, and I'm going to make my way over to the Object tab, and I'd like to fix the line spacing. You can see that down below in the paragraph drop down here. It's set to 0.1. I'm just going to move that off to the left to about -2. I'm also going to bring this copy down and then kind of space everything out. For whatever reason, oftentimes things get shifted, but that's okay. You can make those adjustments here in Animate. Now that that's been fixed, I'd like to set the duration for this digital ad. The duration for the ad will be 12 seconds. In my timeline, I'm just going to scale this down a bit, and the duration for this will be 12 seconds. So I'm going to scroll over to the 12-second mark in the timeline, and the key here is click the first frame, so that would be the button layer, and then hold shift and click the last frame in the 12-second frame mark. And we're going to add frames, and to do this, simply click F5 on your keyboard, and that inserts frames, not keyframes or any other kind of frames. It's just frames to lengthen out the timeline. And you can see now we've extended that duration to 12 seconds in total. The first tip we'll look at is setting a panning motion to the main image in this digital ad. Let's take a closer look. So I'm going to click on that first keyframe here. That's at the first frame in the sequence. And let's scroll back over to the 12-second frame mark and click the last frame on the image layer. And I'm going to press F6 now, and what that does, it's inserting a keyframe. While I'm still selected on that last keyframe, I'm going to click on the image. I'm going to hold shift to maintain the position so it doesn't shift up or down. I just want to shift this to the left. So hold shift and drag to the left. And once you see that the image ends, you'll know that you'll see the edge of it. There it is. I'm going to pull back and snap that back to the right edge of the canvas. And now you'll notice that the first point has the original position, and then the second point, point B, has the altered shifted position, which we just did. Now I'm going to click anywhere in between those 2 points, and we're going to add what's called a classic tween. I'm going to right click in any point between the two and choose classic tween. Now that's going to take a sec, but what I'll do is go back to the beginning and let's play this out. If I press return, now pressing return on your keyboard is how you play out the animation, and you'll notice there that it's playing nice and slow at 12 seconds in total. The second animation tip will be focusing on how to create a text reveal to the main title in this digital ad. Next, I'm going to create a new layer above the title layer. So just click on the title layer and then create a new layer, and let's call this line. This will be the line that will be part of the text reveal animation. So we're going to place the playhead at the very beginning on frame 1, and then I'm going to click on the rectangle tool. I'm also going to ensure that there is no stroke applied, and I do not have one. So if you do have a stroke, just make sure it's not, and the color will be the same color as the text here. Now I'm going to zoom in a bit when I do this, and I'm just going to start anywhere above the text, and let's create a narrow line like so, and then just extend it so it's covering the bottom portion of the text as well. So something like that is fine. I also want to ensure that this line is converted to a symbol, and to do that, let's click on this selection tool, then click on the line and go up to Modify, Convert to Symbol. Let's name this Line Shape, and let's ensure that the type is also set to Movie Clip. Go ahead and click OK. Now that is a symbol. If you have to adjust the line width, you can do that by clicking the free transform tool and then adjusting the anchors. But I'm happy with the width of that. That's just fine. Now we could start focusing on the animation. Before we do that, I'm going to go back to the fit in window view. I'm going to move the playhead to the 20 frame mark, click there, and add a keyframe by pressing F6. Move the playhead to the 1 second frame mark, click there, and press F6 again. I'm going to move my playhead back to the 20 second or the 20 frame mark, click that frame, and in the transform panel, which I have in the right hand side dock, now by default, yours may be here as well. If you don't have it or you don't see it, you can access it by going to Window and then Transform. Now in the Transform window, I'm just going to adjust the scale height to 0. And you'll notice now that you can't see the line, but it'll open back up at the 1 second frame mark. Now I'm going to click anywhere between those 2 points, right click, and let's choose Create Classic Tween. Now I won't need the frames prior to the tween, so I'm going to click on that first one, hold my Shift key, click the last one right before the tween, and press Delete on your keyboard. I do want to add an easing to this classic tween. So in the Frame tab up top in your Properties panel, you'll notice that the ease is set to Properties Together, which is fine, but the effect is set to Classic Ease. I'm going to click that, and let's choose Ease In, and then double click Quad. Now let's have a look. If I start it from the top, I'm going to press Return, and you'll notice that we have a nice line open animation. Have a look again, return, and the line opens. And you can see that the image is still panning, which is nice. Now the next animation is having that line animate over the text. This will be part of the text reveal. Now I'm going to move the playhead to the 35 frame mark and click on that frame. Press F6 to insert another keyframe. Let's scrub the playhead to the 2 second frame mark. So this one will be a little bit longer. Click on that frame and press F6 to insert another keyframe. Now with that frame still selected, hold your Shift key and press your right arrow key to shift that line over to the right. And just position it in an area where you're happy. So something like that, I might come back just a bit. Something like that is just fine. Now, if I click anywhere between those 2 points, right click, and let's create another classic tween. You'll notice now we have the open and then it'll pan over, which is great. Let's add another ease effect to this. So click anywhere in that classic tween, click the effect where it says classic ease, and let's do an ease out. And just to remain consistent with the ease effect, let's click quad, double click it. So let's have a look now. Return, open, and then it pans across. And you can see that the easing looks a lot better. So to close out the line animation, let's position the playhead at the 65 frame mark, right there. Click on that frame and press F6. Move the playhead to the 75 frame mark. Click on that frame and press F6 again. And basically we're just doing the opposite of this first classic tween setup. So let's click on that last frame, go back to the transform window, and once again, change the scale height position to 0. Right click anywhere between those 2 points and create a classic tween. Click anywhere between those 2 points and let's change the effect to ease out and then quad. Now what I want to do is click that frame right after the tween, scroll all the way to the end, and hold your shift key when you're doing this. We're going to click, make sure that you've lined it up with the line layer. Hold shift and click that last line, right click and choose remove frames. Now let's take a look at this animation so far. Press return, open, swipe, and then it closes. We'll need to add another layer to our timeline, and this will become the mask layer. We'll apply this right above the title layer. Click the title layer and then choose new layer, click that icon, and let's rename this layer mask. I'm gonna move the playhead to the 2-second frame mark. And while I've done that, I'm gonna click on the rectangle tool again, and then just give it a fill of your choice. I'm gonna choose this green color from my button. I'm gonna zoom in when I do this. This will become the mask. So I'm just going to create a rectangle that covers the entire text, the title in this digital ad. So I'm gonna start from the bottom and drag out like so. And then I'm just going to adjust it like that. I'm going to click on the selection tool and then just adjust the line accordingly. In my layers panel, each layer has a color square next to the name of the layer. In the mask layer, I'm going to click the orange square here just so I could see the outline of my layer or that shape that I'm looking at there. So let's move the playhead to the 35 frame mark because this shape, this mask, will follow the line sequence. So I'm going to click on the 35 frame mark and press F6 to add a keyframe there. I'm going to move the playhead to the 2-second frame mark and do the same thing. Remember, we're doing this on the mask layer, which is very important. Click F6 or press F6 to insert another keyframe. Let's move the playhead back to the 35 frame mark and click that frame. With that frame still selected, hold shift and use your left arrow key on your keyboard to move that shape. And we want the right side of that shape to be on the right side of the actual line there. You might have to zoom in to get a closer look at this. I'm going to zoom in. That looks pretty good, okay? Now what I'm gonna do here is click anywhere in between. Now we've been adding classic tweens. Now because this is a shape, we can add a shape tween. So right click and let's choose create shape tween. You'll notice that the shape and the line, there's some distance there. So if I scrub through it, they're not aligning together. So that is because we have to add the same ease effect to the shape to follow the line closely. So remember, if I click this first one, the line sequence at the 35 frame mark and the 2-second frame mark, the ease effect was quad ease out. Let's add the same effect here to the shape. So in the effect, click that, ease out, double click the quad, ease out. And you'll notice now if I scrub through, those are following together. Now I don't need the frames prior to this shape tween, remember, so I'm going to click that first one, hold shift, click the frame right before the tween, and press delete to delete those frames. Okay, so you can see that's looking good so far. Now I'm going to click that frame again in the layers panel next to the mask layer so I could see the fill again. Okay, so that's our mask. Okay, the last step here is actually clicking the mask layer, right click, and then choose mask. Okay, one last thing I have to do is move this one right here, this frame, to the 35 frame mark as well. So let's have a look now. Okay, so I'm gonna go back to the fit in window view, go to the very beginning and press return, and we should open, and then we get that cool mask effect, the text reveal effect. Return, open, text reveal, close. That's looking really good. The third animation tip, we'll look at how to set a fade in effect to a text element. We'll start animating this at the 75 frame mark. So in other words, when that line closes at 75, I want the copy animation to fade in. So I'm going to click 75 frame mark on the copy layer, press F6, and we'll have this come in. Let's do 85, F6 again. And for this, we have to also convert this to a symbol. Otherwise, we won't be able to add that fade in effect using the color effect. So click on that, go to modify, convert to symbol, and I'm just going to call this copy text is fine. Again, the type will be movie clip. Click OK. And now you'll notice in the object tab in the properties panel, while I've clicked this, we have a color effects drop down. And in this case, while I'm still clicked on that first frame in the 75 frame mark, I'm going to click alpha. So alpha is like the opacity, and then just make sure that the alpha is set to 0 on the first frame, and you'll notice that it will fade in, but we have to add that classic tween, remember? So click anywhere between those 2 points, right click, create classic tween. Okay. Now, if you don't remove the frames prior to that, it'll appear and then it'll fade in again. So you know the drill by now. Click the first frame, hold shift, click the last frame prior to that tween, and just delete those frames. So now we have open, close the line, and a fade in. The fourth essential animation tip I'll go over is setting a motion preset to a button so it pulses. Let's check it out. And for this, I'm going to add a preset animation built right into Animate so it pulses. So I'm going to move the playhead to the 3-second frame mark. And before I add my animation, I want to click the button. This is a grouped element here. And I'm going to go to modify and convert to symbol. Now I'm going to call this button, and the type dropdown, we do want to choose button because I'm going to show you how to add a web link to this button as a last step. So make sure that you've chosen button here, and then the name is button or whatever you like for the name, but make sure that the type is also button. So go ahead and click OK. Now at the 3-second frame mark, I'm going to add a keyframe there, F6. And this is where we can add the motion preset animation that's built right into Adobe Animate. If I move over to the right-hand side dock, you'll notice I have another window here called Motion Presets. You can access that by going to Window and then Motion Presets. In this window, there's a default presets folder which you can collapse and have a look. You probably notice many of these from InDesign. It's the same type of motion preset that you can apply to an animation using InDesign. Now, the one that we'll use in this project is Pulse. So make sure that you've clicked on the frame for the button and then click Pulse and then click Apply. Now have a look. If I scrub through that really, it pulses way too big. So just because these are presets does not mean that you can't go in and customize it. So I like that. I'm gonna click on the second keyframe here, and I'm gonna go to the transform panel again, and you can see that this is scaling at 132%. So I wanna scale that down to 120, and I wanna make sure that the constraint is the same. So 120, both width and height. So you can see now, I just wanna make sure that that button is staying within the parameters of the canvas, which it is here. So I'm gonna go here, that's 120. It goes back down to 100, I believe, 100. And then I can go back to the fourth keyframe, go back to transform, and you can see this is even bigger. You can't even see the button now at 180%. So 120. So they're both 120, and let's have a look now. It's just a little bit more subtle. If I click or press return, you can see the pulse is a lot better. Now, to ensure that the button remains visible after the shape tween, we'll have to extend the rest of that timeline to the very end, to the 12-second frame mark. So I'm gonna click the frame following the tween, scroll to the very end, hold shift, click the frame at the 12-second frame mark, and you'll notice if I press F5, that frame has now been extended. So I can click there, press return, and you'll notice the pulse happens and the button remains visible. To add the action to the button, we'll have to create one more layer in our timeline. So I'm gonna click on the new layer icon, and this layer will be called Actions. Now, remember, we've already converted our button to a symbol and we named it Button. However, that's different from creating a button instance. We'll need to create a button instance name in order to add the action to it. So go ahead and click the button with your selection tool and have a look in the properties panel in the upper right-hand corner here. There's a field called instance name. So let's just call this BTN_1. Let's go ahead and click on the actions layer, go to window, and let's choose actions. That opens the actions window, and let's click on add using wizard. Now it gives you some actions to select. The one we want is go to web page. You'll notice that applies some code above. Now by default, it'll direct viewers to adobe.com. You can leave that for this exercise or maybe put something else. I'll put my website, montilladesign.com/tutorials. Go ahead and click next. This is where you're going to add the triggering event. And in this case, we want on mouse click. And remember that instance name we set? There it is there. Select an object for the triggering event. We'll set it to BTN_1. Once you see that, go ahead and click finish and add. You know that you've set the action because if you look in the actions panel in the first frame, you'll notice that there's a little A symbol to signify that the action has been applied. So I can go ahead and close this. And next, we'll test out the digital ad in a web browser. There are two ways to view the project in a web browser. The first is going up to Control, Test Movie, and then choosing in browser, or you can click the play icon in the upper right-hand corner of the workspace. This is called Test Movie. So click that. That will launch in a web browser of your choice. And let's take a look. You can see that all the animation is happening just the way we set it up. The pan animation on our image is working properly. Let me refresh that so you can have a look again. The text reveal, the fade in, the pulse. If I click that, that takes me to montilladesign.com/tutorials. So that is how you would create a digital ad using Adobe Animate, adding this really cool animation. Thanks for watching, and I hope these 4 essential animation tips and tricks in Adobe Animate can be helpful to you. If you'd like to learn more about Adobe Animate, check out this playlist I put together right here. Until next time, take care and keep creating.